If you don't know who I am Emily Ferguson's father. By the way, as I've gotten older, I don't know what's happened to me. I get emotional at stuff. I don't know what's going on. It just feels like I've gotten really squishy. I don't know what the deal is. And I tell you what, if you want to get me, thank you, by the way, for having me speak now rather than right after the worship. There's something that happens to me when I am singing to my father, being led by the voice of my daughter. I crumble somewhere in between. And I tell you what an awesome, unbelievably wonderful thing it is to be shifting in my life to a place where I can be defined by my children, rather than them being defined simply by me. And maybe that's part of what makes it so painful to consider that we might be defined by who's missing and who we are not. If that doesn't sock you in the gut, something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with me on the days I'm satisfied with where we're at. As we get going here, I do teach leadership, and I'm often made uncomfortable in conversations, particularly with colleagues or those in places that will address me in such a way that the mere addressing of who I am suggests that I may think I know and am leadership. I am very clear about the fact that I don't have too many of the answers, but I do think this is absolutely true. We're never going to come to the right answers if we're not asking the right questions. And so I'm going to, rather than try to teach you in the midst of this vast experience, try to teach you leadership, I have some questions that I want to provoke you with on the subject of leadership. Maybe you've heard the parable. I heard somebody try to pass it off as an actual real story, and it doesn't fly. There's no possible way this is a real story. But as the parable goes, a man is walking along a river bank, and he's enjoying nature, and down floats a screaming human being, obviously flailing about. This is not fun, what's happening in the water here. This person is drowning. And so, being a good swimmer and stripping off maybe a shirt and shoes and wallet, dives in and rescues this drowning person, pulls them to shore. Maybe you've heard this illustration. Pulls them to shore, a little bit of resuscitation, only to be kind of disturbed by screams up the river and down floating another person. As this rescuer is in the water, pulling this one to safety, screams, more people are in the water, and it's kind of the Lucille Ball thing that's happening with the candies and the conveyor belt, and they're pulling people out from the water onto shore, and he's getting more and more disturbed as he dives in and can't get two at a time now, and he's trying to recruit others to be pulling people out of the water. And as the parable goes, the problem is he's fixated on his spot in the water with drowning people, and that's really hard not to get focused on. But as the story goes, there's something bigger that's going on as person after person drowning. He's losing them now. He can't get them all. And something's going on at the bridge over the river, further upstream, where people are being shoved off the bridge. And we focus on, boy, I just wonder, maybe we're asking the wrong question. It feels a lot like this conversation is driven around the question, how can we rescue and save our young missing? What if the problem is on the bridge? What if, in fact, God wants to disturb my heart to say, it's not the young people that need rescuing first. It's our church that needs some rescuing. Maybe you, and I just love good books, maybe you've heard of the book Think Better by Tim Herson. He gives an illustration from nature of processionary caterpillars. Have you ever seen these? Do you know what processionary caterpillars are? Anybody read the book Think Better? I highly recommend it. Provocative book. That is not a rope. That is not, those are caterpillars. One after the other, after the other, after the other. The way processionary caterpillars work is they get hungry and they head out for food. Whichever one is the first one out starts laying down a silk trail behind it. The next one jumps in line. So we're on the move. Let's go. Jumps in line and lays a silk trail on top of the silk trail, and on top of the silk trail, on top of the silk. They can go hundreds of caterpillars long, one laying silk trail on top of the other. Now, there's nothing special about the lead dude. He's just in the lead. And he's the one laying down the trail. But they will not deviate from that lead guy, that lead caterpillar. I don't know, maybe it's female. Don't bait me. Off they go. Well, there in the 1800s was a naturalist that loved just trying to draw conclusions from nature, and a guy named Jean, in fact, I'll just throw his name up here, Jean-Henri Fabre. 1896 decides he's going to do an experiment with these processionary caterpillars. He creates a ramp up to a big pot, and he lures with food, he lures these processionary caterpillars in a line up this ramp onto the rim of a pot, and they begin to circle the pot. He keeps luring them along till the circle actually closes. He brushes off the other caterpillars, removes the ramp, and they're now trailing one another. No one's clear on who's leading. They're following the silk trail, because that's what you do. Silk trail, there I go. The guy who was in the lead forgot he was. In the middle of the pot is a bunch of food, specifically enjoyed by this type of caterpillar, not 12 inches away from this procession of caterpillars that are looking for food. Days go by. 6 days later. And they're still circling the pot, because that's what you do.
That's animal cruelty.
We'll jump back into 1896 and get him. Day 6, Fabre suggests that they have done the equivalent of 90 miles of a human being going without food, without water, without rest, without sleep, nonstop, crawlingly forward, and then caterpillars begin to drop. And it is once the caterpillars begin to drop out of the circle, there's food over there, that they break for the food. And Tim Herson puts it this way. As with the caterpillars in Fabre's experiment, sometimes the only thing that saves us is that things go so drastically wrong that we're forced out of our processions. Our pattern has been so counterproductive that the circle we've created can no longer sustain itself. It breaks apart. With no more circle, we're forced to find new ways of doing things. Change comes. There's no other option, and I wonder if we're there. I wonder if we're there. I think it was Twain that said, change comes when the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing. And I don't know if you're experiencing pain, but I know I am. And there are very few things in this world right now that fire me up more than young people and leadership. Right now, we are hobbling on one leg. And we have our most healthy leg wondering why they're not included. We may need to look at this a little bit differently. The subject of leadership, a question that I have is, what drives leaders? What motivates people to do anything these days? Do you know that the people we're talking about, young college graduates, are out in the world immediately put into play in big-time stuff? Out in the world, nobody's waiting around. Nobody's saying, hey, we just want to watch you for a while. Because people know that the best ones aren't going to stick around long. They're getting put in play now. Big, big experiences in leadership. And the question comes, what drives a person? What causes us to be motivated? And in the book Daniel Pink, anybody ever read any Daniel Pink? In the book Daniel Pink writes Drive. he expresses and explores that it's no longer our kind of motivation 2.0 thinking, what motivates people, the idea of rewards and punishments. It only gets you so far. Where it really goes deep, well, he describes three things. He describes autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Autonomy, the opportunity to really have freedom, to really be able to own your thing. Often when we talk about leadership, we're really talking about management. Can you effectively run my deal? Can I walk away from the shop and return and my tools are where I left them? Don't decide we're reorganizing. Don't start a whole new thing. Don't open at a different time. Don't, whoa. What we're looking for you to do is demonstrate you can do what I do. And if you can demonstrate that, then I will start putting your own name. We'll remove Junior. And you'll be the real one. And they're gone in the meantime. You know what the world is doing? The world is saying, you are so fantastic, we want to plug you in as fast as we can. We're going to let you decide how you're going to do your work. You're going to tell us. You're going to decide when you work. You're going to decide what time of day you work. You're going to decide. Do you know Google has 20% days? 20% days. 20% of a Google employee's time is given them to decide what they're going to work on. And Google will tell you that their best ideas come from 20% days. That's 1/5 of their work time. You just, as long as you can give some explanation that this is for the benefit of Google someday, somehow, maybe if it worked, possibly. Go for it. What do you want to attack? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? What will this look like? Autonomy says, I've got room to fully be me. And I can do it on my time. I can do it with my best. I can do it in the shape that I make up. I don't have to try to mimic you. Our young, brilliant children out in the real world, they're paid best if they're more unique. On the subject of leadership, you're rewarded for being a really unique individual in the real world. In the church, I fear, we reward for sameness. Autonomy? Frankly, they're a little bored with us. They're worried about it, but they're bored with us. Why? Because they have thoughts that are their own, that we wish they wouldn't bring up. They have activities that just haven't been done. By the way, could it be possibly that the best ideas for God's kingdom simply haven't been thought of yet? If that's true, we better be prepared for stuff that's not the same. Mastery, you get to pick your spot and be the authority. Oh, try being an authority on almost anything in this church. And, you know, I mean, I don't know. It just feels like, whoo, that's dangerous. That's dangerous to set up yourself as, this is my place. This is what I have to bring. This is what I have to offer. No. You don't know how we do it here. Get in the shape of we got a door, and it's in a certain shape, and if you can't squeeze through that. Purpose. This is good news, by the way, for us. That what drives people today, and I'm talking about young, but this is humanity. What drives people is a sense of clarity of purpose. Why are we doing this? But you do understand this is part of why our young leaders are a little bit distraught with us. Because they hear us using words like evangelism, while in their eyes they're seeing the world around them die from starvation, bigotry, wars. But we're more interested, they wonder, in mailing out pieces of mail. And I know so many young leaders who have something we covet, but they're convinced we don't want it. I have been forever fascinated with, and I love to torture people with this. I worked in a boarding academy setting where it was really easy game. To walk into a board meeting or a staff meeting where we're talking about, well, is it, and I've never really gotten a full conclusion, is it genes? If they have grommets, does that make it genes? Is it grommets? Is it the metal? Because if they don't have metal, is it the color? Because if they're black, if they're blue, then what happens with the, right? I mean, in a boarding academy setting, you're deciding, whether they can have grapes in the cafeteria because, stuff happens, and, which sidewalks people can walk on, and, what time the lights go out, and all this stuff. So you march in and you drop this line. It's the work of true education. Ellen White, right? Boy, I tell you, I love this quote from her. It is the work of true education to develop this power to train youth to be thinkers and not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts, to not line everybody up in a procession. Break free, break for the food. We're dying here. I was reading it the one day, quoting from it, and I actually quoted it correctly. I have a real problem with quoting things correctly because I could not possibly lead worship in music because I can't come up with the same words. I come up with great words, and they often even rhyme. And have sometimes even improved the meaning, but they're just not the words that are supposed to be there. This one particular day, I'm actually being true to the words. It's the work of true education to develop this power. And then I stop myself, this power, what's this power? This power. So what would you say this power is? I'm trapping you. Shh, quiet, careful. Because you do what I did, and you wander down, you go, it's to train youth to be thinkers, right? Well, that's not the way you study the Bible, is it? You actually need to back up a little bit, get context, and try to figure out what if, in fact, Ellen White didn't just write that sentence. Whoa, that got jammed up in our presentation, but we'll make it. Every human being created in the image of God is endowed with a power akin to that of the Creator. What's the power? Individuality. And by the way, you could stop there. You could do a sermon series on that, couldn't you? You want to be in the image of God? You will look like no one else. Isn't that our Creator? That He would make us in His image and we would end up not looking like anything else? Individuality, power to think and to do. The men, I'm throwing women in there, the men and women in whom this power is developed are the men and women who bear responsibilities, who are leaders in enterprise, and who influence character and in a jammed up short period of time, way before John Maxwell ever said it. Ellen White says, those in whom individuality is unleashed, they become the leaders of our community, the influencers of the world around us. And this is what we're after. But there's something pesky about individuality. It's uncomfortable. It's different. Sounds different, looks different, is different. And the world at large is rewarding extraordinarily our young people for their incredible individuality and what they bring to the table. And this is why they don't really want any part of church leadership. They see it as some waiting game or some mimicry we're after. But God asks us to create the kind of environment. Maybe we should go back up onto the bridge and try to figure out what's tossing these people in the water. And I know, I look around a room like this and I know enough of the people in it that I know there's a part of you that this just reaches in and goes, oh man, that's the nerve. Oh, that's the nerve. I've felt it myself, where I have felt cramped. I have felt kind of processed. And I want to be unleashed. So I don't know, I'm not trying to bring too many answers to this question right here, but I think it's important that we ask the right questions. On the subject of leadership, What is it about what we're doing that any young, vibrant, brilliant, young person would want any part of? I have decided that I'm now at the point in my life where whatever credibility I have, marginal as it is, there's no other day to save it for. There's no other thing to fight for. I don't know, it clearly isn't making me more money. I believe it is personally, and you could easily have a different one, but personally it is my mission to leverage whatever credibility I have to create a space where young people are not just okay, they are recruited to be a part of leadership now. It will revitalize us. You know, there's a theory in the world today with regard to leadership that as yesterday, the whole model for leadership was that there was a white horse somebody would ride in on, usually a man. And they would come with the answers to our problems. Today, most people realize and understand that what's gone wrong in the world is too complex for any one person. And it will not be because of the white horse rider. It will be because of incredibly talented, gifted, purposeful, mission-driven people who sacrifice of themselves, who walk into the room and say, I have something for this conversation. I know I'm not the full answer, but I will collaborate. We will put our best in. And right now, we're chopping major chunks of our best thinking out of the conversation. We need to start risking. And by the way, here's what I believe. If we risk in the face of the challenges, uncomfortable as they might be, the challenges that our young people are putting in our face, if we will risk on their behalf, and if we will be challenged by them, it earns us the right to challenge them back. They're not looking for some situation where everybody just believes they're the answer to all things. They just want meaningful roles in what God is doing, and God is calling it out from them, and He will send them to the rocks if we will not cry out on this. So it's time. It's not some other day. It's painfully emotional for me now because my kids are all getting to that young adulthood level. So I'm ready to go. I mean, I'll fight for it. I got nothing else I'm saving for. This is my spiritual retirement right now. There's no other day. There's no spot that I look around and see you have that I want. I look up at young people leading worship. I look across the table at my really good friend who's 25 years old and provokes me to do things that I just wouldn't do. And I say, we'd better activate the rest of our body. I don't know if you like games. I love them. Anything that involves strategy I can be drawn into. Some people think I'm overly competitive. I don't know that I need to win, but I love strategy. To figure out the best ways to do it. And my kids, I've gotten this reputation with my kids. Oh, don't play Dad in Monopoly. He'll just win. Okay, so maybe. How many of you have played Monopoly? This is a little question that some of you are filled with shame and no. If you've played Monopoly, you understand this can be a rather lengthy game. A rather lengthy game. My wife tells me that she will not play, by the way, unless we just completely badger her into it. Why? She hates it. Why? Because in her childhood, her older brothers would make her play Monopoly. And they would always win. And you know that feeling when you're playing Monopoly, when you know you've lost? It's just dawning on you, there's just no way to leverage Baltic Avenue into like a, and the railroad. Seriously, what was I thinking? Chance, let's change the rules. Maybe I could be the banker for a while. But you know you're dead. And your opponent, though, is so relishing this moment that they're drawing it out by saying, well, I'll tell you what, you get 50% this time around. Give me all your orange properties and you will live. And around you go, and they will not let you quit. But they have the monopoly. It's over. And this is what our young people feel about this church. The game for them, the game is over. And we're just making them play so that we can collect their money. That was metaphorical. I haven't drawn out all of the analogies of this, but I wonder if maybe they'd rather play some Risk. But you and I have the keys to the game closet. I don't know. I just know there's enough power in this room to change the world.
That's right.
It doesn't need to be 12. So do we have the courage? Do we have the guts? Are we going to blame some administrative level of something? I know I can't afford to. I can't afford to. We were talking about change a second ago. It's easy to look at the change that we wish other people would make. But change starts small. You never change macro first. Let's get at it. Let's start carving up the properties. Let's give some real ownership. I happen to have enough conversations with young people to think that this is what they're hungry for anyway. So I'm going to pray over it. Father, oh, you know me, Lord God, and you love me anyway. You understand how regularly I like to sound certain, even when I'm confused. I just know that this situation is desperate, and it's desperate on personal levels. It's desperate because of the faces of our young that are just, they're turning into some gray avatar of somebody who left the conversation. Lord, give us strength. Give us so much belonging in you that we would give away our power, that we would give away authority, that we would allow autonomy, that we would infuse purpose, and that we would admit the mastery that some of these young warriors could be for you. Let us be your body in a new way. Bless us, save us, gift us. We will risk for your kingdom in Jesus. Amen.